First contact deception. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the HS Phantom, watching distant stars streak past like falling rain. The experimental warship's stealth systems hummed quietly, masking their true capabilities beneath layers of carefully crafted deception. To any observer, the Phantom appeared to be nothing more than a humble research vessel, its hull marked with Civilian Scientific Institute's logos and studded with obvious sensor arrays. "Contact bearing 340, announced Lieutenant Wei from Tactical, his voice carrying the measured calm of a veteran officer. "Silhouette matches Dominion patterns. Looks like a patrol group, 3 vessels, Huntress class." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Dominion, an empire spanning hundreds of systems, had earned their reputation for technological superiority through centuries of conquest. Their ships were marvels of engineering, protected by energy shields that could shrug off conventional weapons and armed with plasma cannons that could reduce planets to slag. They were also, Chen knew, catastrophically arrogant. "Status of our camouflage systems?" she asked, turning to Chief Engineer Patel at her engineering station. "Running perfectly, Captain," Patel replied, dark eyes gleaming with pride. "As far as their sensors can tell, we're putting out the energy signature of a civilian fusion drive. All our quantum systems are masked behind false radiation patterns. They'll see exactly what we want them to see." The Phantom represented humanity's greatest achievement in military deception. While other species raced to build bigger ships with more powerful weapons, humanity had taken a different approach. They'd created a vessel that could hide in plain sight, its true capabilities concealed beneath layers of technological sleight of hand. "They're changing course to intercept," Wei reported. "Looks like they're curious about us." "Excellent," Chen said, settling into her command chair. "Communications, prepare our first contact package. Make sure it includes all the appropriate indicators of a simple research vessel that's accidentally strayed into their territory." Lieutenant Santos at Communications nodded, her fingers dancing across her holographic interface. "Ready, Captain. I've included some deliberately poor translations of scientific terminology. Should help reinforce their assumptions about our technological level." The bridge crew shared knowing looks. The Phantom's first contact package was a masterpiece of misdirection, filled with carefully crafted errors and limitations that would convince the Dominion they were dealing with a primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel. "Multiple scanning beams detected," Wei announced. "They're doing a full spectrum analysis." "Let them look," Chen replied. "Maintain current speed and heading. We're just a simple research vessel, after all. No reason to act suspicious." The minutes ticked by as the Dominion patrol drew closer. Chen could imagine their commander's smug satisfaction as their scans revealed exactly what the Phantom wanted them to see: outdated propulsion systems, minimal weapons, and basic shields that wouldn't stop a meteor, let alone a plasma bolt. "They're hailing us," Santos reported. "Text only, broadcasting in multiple formats. They're demanding we identify ourselves and explain our presence in their space. Send our response package," Chen ordered. "Let's see how they react to meeting their technological inferiors." The response came quickly. Santos couldn't suppress a grin as she read it. "They're ordering us to power down our primitive engines and prepare for inspection. They're saying they'll be merciful if we cooperate, given our obvious technological limitations." "How generous of them," Chen remarked dryly. "Wei, tactical analysis. 3 Huntress-class vessels, Captain. Heavy shields, plasma weaponry, standard Dominion combat formations. They're positioning themselves in a triangle around us. Textbook containment pattern for a discipled vessel." Chen nodded. The Dominion's rigid adherence to military doctrine was about to become their greatest weakness. Time to show them why humanity doesn't advertise all its capabilities. Battle stations, quiet protocol. Throughout the massive ship, crews moved to combat positions without alarms or announcements. Weapon systems powered up behind their masking fields, and strike craft crews prepared for launch from what appeared to be cargo bays. "They're in position," Wei reported. All three vessels maintaining standard formation distances. Their weapons are powered but not charged. They're not expecting any resistance. Deploy the quantum nets, Chen ordered. Let's see how their fancy shields handle something they've never encountered before. Hidden emitters along the Phantom's hull activated, creating an invisible web of quantum-entangled particles around the ship. To the Dominion sensors, it would appear as nothing more than background radiation, until it was too late. Nets deployed, Patel confirmed. Ready on your mark, Captain. Chen leaned forward in her chair, watching the Dominion vessels through the viewport. Their sleek, predatory forms hung in space like sharks circling prey. Unaware, they were actually facing a carefully disguised killer whale. Incoming transmission, Santos announced. Their commander is demanding we open our airlocks for boarding parties. They're saying resistance would be. She paused, smirking, futile and foolish, given our technological inferiority. Well, Chen said, we shouldn't disappoint their expectations. Lieutenant Wei, prepare to demonstrate why humanity believes in hiding our best tricks until they're needed. Execute Operation Trojan Horse. The quantum nets suddenly pulsed with energy, creating localized fields of altered spacetime around each Dominion vessel. Their supposedly impenetrable shields, designed to repel energy and matter, were useless against an attack that manipulated the fabric of space itself. Target lock confirmed, Wei reported, his voice steady despite the excitement. Chen could see in his eyes. All vessels are contained within the quantum fields. Send our response to their boarding demand, Chen ordered. I believe it's time to update their assessment of human capabilities. Santos typed quickly, then read aloud. Message sent. Regarding your assessment of our technological level, we regret to inform you that your scans may have been somewhat misleading. Allow us to demonstrate. Chen allowed herself another small smile. Deploy strike craft. Let's show the Dominion why humans believe appearances can be deceiving. What the Dominion had dismissed as cargo pods suddenly split open, revealing sleek combat vessels that seemed to phase in and out of normal space. The Phantom's true weapons, quantum-shifted railguns, phase cannons, and reality-warping torpedoes, emerged from their hiding places within what had appeared to be simple sensor arrays and communication dishes. Strike craft launched, Wei confirmed. Quantum fields are holding steady. The Dominion vessels are attempting to power up their engines, but the spatial distortions are preventing their standard escape protocols. Open a channel to all vessels, Chen commanded. I think it's time for a proper introduction. Santos nodded, establishing the link. Chen stood, straightening her uniform, and addressed their trapped opponents. To the commanders of the Dominion patrol fleet, you assumed you were dealing with a primitive species worthy only of conquest or subjugation. That assumption was a tactical error. This vessel, the HSS Phantom, represents humanity's philosophy of warfare. Why reveal your true capabilities when you can let your enemies underestimate you until it's too late? Consider this your first lesson in human military doctrine. Your next actions will determine whether it's also your last. The bridge crew watched as confusion and fear replaced arrogance in the Dominion's communications. Their carefully maintained formation began to break as each ship tried to escape the quantum nets, their coordinated movements dissolving into chaos. Captain, Wei reported, they're attempting to bring their weapons online. Should we show them the rest of our surprises? Chen retook her seat, her expression now serious. Indeed, Lieutenant. After all, it would be rude not to give them a complete demonstration of why humanity has survived and thrived in a hostile universe. Initiate Phase 2 of Operation Trojan Horse. Let's teach the Dominion why appearances can be the most effective weapon of all. The art of misdirection. The Dominion ship's plasma beams lashed out brilliant streams of energy that would have vaporized any normal vessel. But the HSS Phantom was far from normal. As the beams struck the ship's supposedly primitive hull, Chief Engineer Patel's voice rang out with barely contained excitement. Energy absorption matrices functioning at peak efficiency, Captain. Their weapons are actually charging our secondary power systems. Current conversion rate is 97%. Captain Chen watched the tactical display as the Dominion vessels continued their assault, each blast making the Phantom stronger rather than weaker. Status of our quantum-shifted weapons. Fully charged and ready, Lieutenant Wei reported from Tactical. The enemy's still firing on our decoy mission points. They haven't realized those vulnerable areas are actually our power collection nodes. The Phantom's true genius lay not in brute force, but in turning an enemy's assumptions against them. Every seemingly weak point was a trap, every apparent vulnerability a carefully planned deception. Multiple new contacts. Wei announced suddenly. 5 more Dominion warships dropping out of FTL. Looks like they called for reinforcements. Perfect, Chen replied, surprising her bridge crew. More ships means more opportunities to demonstrate why humanity prizes adaptability over raw power. Lieutenant Santos, broadcast on all frequencies, let's give them another chance to reconsider their approach. But the Dominion commander's response came in the form of more weapons fire, their formation spreading out to surround the Phantom completely. They still believed they were dealing with a primitive vessel using some kind of trick to survive their initial assault. They're deploying their infamous spiral of death formation, Wei noted, referring to the Dominion's most feared attack pattern. Standard doctrine when facing an unknown defense capability. Chen's smile grew wider. Exactly as the simulations predicted. They're so convinced of their tactical superiority that they'll follow their combat manuals even when those manuals are working against them. Execute Operation Mirror House. Throughout the Phantom, systems that had remained dormant now hummed to life. What the Dominion sensors registered as hull damage was actually a series of quantum field generators activating, creating localized pockets of warped spacetime around the ship. Mirror House protocols engaged, Patel confirmed. Quantum fields are stable and ready for phase shifting. The Dominion ships tightened their spiral weapons, charging for a synchronized barrage that should have overwhelmed any defensive system. They didn't realize they were about to attack themselves. Now, Chen ordered. The quantum field suddenly pulsed, creating perfect reflective surfaces in space itself. As the Dominion vessels fired, their plasma beams struck these invisible mirrors and were redirected back at their sources. The Dominion commanders watched in horror as their own weapons fire slammed into their supposedly impenetrable shields. Direct hits on all vessels, White reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. Their shield harmonics are destabilizing. They didn't calibrate their defenses against their own weapon frequencies. Of course not, Chen replied. Why would they? No species has ever turned their attacks back against them quite so literally. Deploy the Whispers. From what appeared to be simple communication arrays, the Phantom released clouds of microscopic drones. To Dominion sensors, they registered as nothing more than background radiation, their true nature hidden by quantum manipulation fields. Whispers are in position, Santos reported, beginning electronic warfare protocols. The tiny drones infiltrated the Dominion ships' external sensor arrays, feeding false data directly into their tactical systems. Suddenly, each Dominion vessel detected hundreds of Phantom targets, every one appearing to be another human warship emerging from stealth. The Dominion formation broke completely, their rigid combat doctrine crumbling in the face of an impossible scenario. Some ships opened fire on empty space, others attempted to retreat, their carefully coordinated movements degrading into chaos. They're trying to adapt their tactics, Wei observed, watching the tactical display. But their command and control systems are too centralized. Each ship has to wait for updated orders from their formation leader. Chen nodded. Humanity learned long ago that the ability to act independently in combat is just as important as coordinated action. Time to show them why we train every crew member to think creatively. Launch the Dancers. What the Dominion had dismissed as escape pods suddenly activated, revealing themselves as highly maneuverable strike craft. Unlike traditional fighters, these vessels moved in patterns based on human dance choreography. their seemingly random movements making them impossible to target with conventional tracking systems. "Strike craft performing beautifully," Paddle reported. "The quantum propulsion systems are masking their acceleration perfectly. As far as Dominion sensors can tell, these ships are violating the laws of physics." The strike craft wove through the Dominion formation, their unconventional flight patterns leaving the alien gunners firing at empty space. Each fighter carried a payload of quantum-shifted torpedoes, weapons that could phase through traditional shields as if they didn't exist. "Enemy vessels attempting to regroup," Wei announced. "They're falling back to their secondary combat protocols." "As expected," Chen replied. The Dominion wrote their combat manuals assuming they'd always have technological superiority. They never considered what would happen when an apparently inferior species could turn that assumption against them. "Deploy the Gordian Protocol." Throughout the battle space, the quantum fields generated by the Phantom began to shift and pulse in complex patterns. The Dominion's advanced sensor systems, trying to analyze and predict these changes, began to overload as they encountered phenomena that shouldn't have been possible according to their understanding of physics. "Their targeting systems are failing," Santos reported with a grin. "They're switching to manual control, but their gunners have never trained for this kind of situation." Chen watched as the mighty Dominion warships, each capable of devastating entire planets, found themselves unable to effectively target what appeared to be a simple research vessel and its small complement of fighters. Every attempt to adapt their tactics was met with a new form of warfare they had never encountered, each response leading them deeper into the trap of their own assumptions. "Captain," Wei called out, "their flagship is powering up its main gun. Looks like they're preparing to fire their planet killer weapon." "Right on schedule," Chen replied calmly. "Sometimes the only way to teach a lesson about hubris is to let your opponent try their ultimate weapon. Prepare the Mobius defense. Let's show them what happens when humanity decides to really push the boundaries of physics." Dance of the Defenders. The Dominion flagship's main gun began to charge, its massive barrel glowing with enough energy to crack a planet's crust. The other Dominion ships moved away, creating a clear firing lane for their ultimate weapon. They had fallen back on their most basic doctrine. When faced with an incomprehensible enemy, eliminate them with overwhelming force. "Main gun at 80% charge," Wei reported, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Impact in 30 seconds. Captain Chen remained calm in her command chair, watching the energy readings climb. "Status of the Mobius defense. Ready and waiting," Chief Engineer Patel responded. "Though I still say naming our most advanced defensive system after a mathematical paradox was asking for trouble. Sometimes the best way to handle trouble is to embrace it," Chen replied. "Deploy the defense field on my mark." The Dominion flagship's weapon reached full charge, its energy signature so powerful that it distorted the space around it. A beam of pure destruction lashed out, crossing the void between ships in an instant. "Mark." The space around the Phantom suddenly twisted, folding in on itself in ways that should have been impossible. The Mobius defense didn't try to stop or absorb the incoming energy. Instead, it bent space into a continuous loop, catching the beam in an endless cycle. "Defense field stable," Patel announced, her fingers dancing across her controls. "The energy is feeding back into itself, creating a self-sustaining temporal loop. They've basically just built us a perpetual power source." On the Dominion ship sensors, it appeared as if their ultimate weapon was both hitting and missing the Phantom simultaneously, the laws of cause and effect breaking down around the human vessel. "Their flagship's computer systems are crashing," Santos reported from communications. "They can't process what's happening to their weapon beam. We're getting some very interesting error messages. Apparently, their physics models don't account for what we're doing." Chen nodded. "Humanity learned long ago that the rules of reality are more flexible than most species assume. Time to demonstrate another principle we've discovered. Lieutenant Wei, prepare the ICO protocol." The Phantom's quantum field generators pulsed again, this time creating multiple temporal shadows of the ship. To the Dominion sensors, It appeared as if the human vessel existed at several points in time simultaneously. Temporal echoes stabilized. Way confirmed. Each shadow is broadcasting a different set of sensor data. Their targeting systems are trying to lock onto all of them at once. The Dominion fleet's coordinated attack patterns dissolved into confusion as their sensors detected the Phantom in dozens of locations, each reading suggesting a different tactical situation. Some shadows appeared heavily damaged, others showed overwhelming power signatures, and still others seemed to flicker in and out of existence. "Launch our boarding teams," Chen ordered. "Let's show them why humans train for more than just ship-to-ship combat." What the Dominion had dismissed as structural damage on the Phantom's hull suddenly came alive. Quantum-shifted boarding pods, disguised as battle scars, detached from the hull and streaked toward the nearest Dominion vessels. Inside the lead pod, Commander Maya Rodriguez checked her team's quantum phase armor one final time. The suits appeared primitive, bulky and unrefined compared to the Dominion's sleek battle armor, but their apparent clumsiness hid technology that could phase through solid matter. "Remember," Rodriguez broadcasted to her teams, "we're not just soldiers, we're teachers. Time to show the Dominion why humans never stopped playing hide and seek." The pods phased through the Dominion ship's outer hulls as if they were mist, reappearing inside what the aliens considered secure compartments. Rodriguez's team materialized in the flagship's main engineering section, their presence triggering dozens of automated defenses. Deploying confusion mines, Rodriguez announced as her team scattered devices that looked like simple smoke grenades. The devices activated, creating localized fields of quantum uncertainty. Within these fields, probability itself became fluid. Weapons might or might not fire. Doors could be both open and closed, and sensor systems received contradictory data from every scan. "Ma'am," one of her team called out, "they're trying to lock down the engineering controls." Rodriguez smiled behind her helmet. "Perfect. Deploy the logic bombs." Small devices attached to control panels began broadcasting streams of paradoxical data into the Dominion's computer systems. The aliens' rigid, logical computers tried to process information that was simultaneously true and false, their networks crashing as they encountered mathematical impossibilities. Back on the Phantom's bridge, Chen watched as the boarding teams systematically disabled the Dominion vessels from within. Status of the flagship's main gun. "Still caught in the Mobius loop," Paddle reported. "We're siphoning off excess energy to power our secondary systems. At this rate, we won't need to refuel for months." "Captain," Santos called out, "we're receiving new transmissions from the Dominion ships. Their crews are, well, they're asking if we're actually demons or gods. Apparently, their religious texts mention beings who could bend reality itself." Chen allowed herself a small laugh. "Inform them that we're neither. We're simply humans who learned that the best way to advance isn't to build bigger weapons, but to think beyond conventional limitations." The tactical display showed more Dominion ships arriving at the edge of the system, drawn by the battle. They held position there, watching as their supposedly invincible patrol fleet was systematically dismantled by what they had dismissed as a primitive vessel. "They're requesting communication," Santos announced. "The new arrivals want to negotiate." "How interesting," Chen replied. "It seems the Dominion might be capable of learning after all. Open a channel. Let's teach them one final lesson about the dangers of underestimating humanity." Breaking formation. The holographic display in the Phantom's command center showed the growing standoff. Dozens of Dominion warships now hung at the system's edge, their weapons powered down but their sensors actively scanning. Behind them, more ships arrived by the minute, each maintaining a careful distance from the human vessel that had so thoroughly dismantled their patrol fleet. "They're sending a representative," Lieutenant Santos reported from communications. "A diplomatic vessel is requesting permission to approach. No weapons signatures detected." Captain Chen studied the tactical display, noting how the Dominion fleet had arranged itself in a ceremonial pattern rather than a combat formation. "Interesting. They're using their first contact protocols rather than their standard military approach." Someone in their command structure is finally thinking creatively. Or they're stalling for time while they figure out how to counter our technology. We suggested from tactical. Probably both, Chen replied with a slight smile. The Dominion didn't build their empire by being completely inflexible. Let's see how they handle a diplomatic version of our strategy. Chief Patel, reconfigure our sensor mask for the next phase. The Phantom's external appearance shifted subtly, its seemingly primitive hull now displaying different markers and insignia. To the approaching Dominion vessel, it would appear that the human ship was gradually revealing new aspects of itself, a calculated demonstration that there was always more than met the eye. Diplomatic vessel is within communication range, Santos announced. They're requesting visual contact. Accept, Chen ordered, straightening in her command chair, but use the filtered feed. Let's maintain some of our mysteries. The main screen activated, showing the interior of the Dominion ship, their representative, a tall figure with iridescent scales and multiple sets of eyes, wore elaborate ceremonial armor that marked them as a high-ranking member of their species. I am Supreme Coordinator Vexthor, the alien announced, their translator converting complex harmonics into human speech. I come seeking understanding of what we have witnessed here today. Chen inclined her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement without submission. Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Space Service vessel Phantom. We welcome the opportunity for dialogue, though I must note that your previous representatives were somewhat less diplomatic in their approach. The Dominion leader's secondary eyes flickered, a sign of discomfort, according to their tactical database. The patrol commander's actions were regrettable. They operated under outdated assumptions about newly encountered species. Assumptions can be dangerous things, Chen replied mildly, as demonstrated by recent events. Meanwhile, in the flagship's engineering section, Commander Rodriguez's team continued their systematic control of key systems. The Dominion crew had been secured in their quarters, their advanced security measures turned useless by human quantum technology. Ma'am, one of her engineers called out, I'm finding something interesting in their technical databases. Their entire technological development followed a single path, each advancement building directly on the last in a straight line. Rodriguez moved to examine the data herself. No divergent research. No alternate approaches. None, the engineer confirmed. It's like they never considered that there might be different ways to solve the same problem. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's advanced in only one direction. Rodriguez finished. That explains a lot about their response to our methods. Make sure this data gets transmitted to the Phantom. Back in the command center, Chen received the information just as Vexthor was explaining the Dominion's traditional approach to first contact situations. Your civilization's protocols are impressively detailed, Chen interrupted smoothly. But I notice they all assume a specific path of technological development. What happens when you encounter a species that took a different route? The Dominion leader's primary eyes widened slightly. Different route. Technology progresses from simple to advanced. This is universal law. Is it? Chen asked, gesturing to her ship. Or is that simply the assumption your civilization built itself upon? The Phantom appears primitive by your standards. Yet it rendered your most advanced weapons not just ineffective, but counterproductive. This is what we wish to understand, Vexthor admitted. Our sensors still cannot fully penetrate your vessel's defenses. We detect contradictory energy patterns, impossible spatial configurations. Even now, we cannot be certain of your ship's true capabilities. That's rather the point, Chen replied. Humanity learned early in our development that survival often depends not on having the biggest weapons, but on making sure your adversaries never know your true capabilities until it's too late. The Dominion leader's scales shifted color, a sign of deep thought. Your species deliberately appears weaker than you are. This is not a concept we have encountered before. Perhaps that's why your empire has never encountered serious resistance before, Chen suggested. You've only ever looked for threats that match your expectations. At that moment, Wei's console lit up with new alerts. Captain, detecting major power fluctuations from the disabled patrol fleet. Their systems are starting to reactivate. Chen nodded calmly. Right on schedule. Commander Rodriguez's teams have finished their work then. Affirmative. Rodriguez's voice came through the comm. We've completely reprogrammed their core systems. When they come back online, they'll be running on human optimization protocols rather than Dominion standard software. Vexthor's translator struggled to convey their mixture of shock and alarm. You've modified our most secure military technology. This is unprecedented. Not modified, Chen corrected. Improved. Your ships will now be capable of operating outside their standard parameters, able to execute maneuvers and tactics they were always physically capable of but prevented from attempting by their original programming. The Dominion leader watched in fascination as their disabled vessels powered up, their movements now fluid and unpredictable, rather than bound by rigid formations. Each ship demonstrated capabilities that their own commanders had never known existed within their design. This, Chen continued, is humanity's real strength. We don't just develop technology. We find new ways to use what already exists. Every tool, every system, every natural law can be approached from multiple angles. The question is, will the Dominion learn from this lesson, or will you continue to assume there's only one path to advancement? Victory through innovation. Supreme Coordinator Vexthor's command center had become unusually crowded with their empire's highest-ranking scientific advisors. Each one studied the streams of data from the modified patrol ships with a mixture of disbelief and fascination. Their vessels, operating under human optimization protocols, were performing maneuvers that violated centuries of established doctrine. Impossible, one advisor muttered, their scales shifting to deep purple with confusion. The power systems cannot function in that configuration. Yet they are, Captain Chen replied from the holographic display. Your ships always had these capabilities. Your own assumptions about what was possible prevented you from discovering them. The demonstration continued as Commander Rodriguez's teams transmitted more performance data. The patrol ships, once bound by rigid protocols, now moved like dancers through space, their coordinated actions flowing like water rather than marching like soldiers. This is why we approached you as we did, Chen explained. A direct demonstration of strength would have led to escalation, possibly war. But by appearing weak, we created an opportunity to teach rather than destroy. Vexthor's primary eyes focused intently on Chen. Your species deliberately crafted this entire encounter. The seemingly primitive vessel, the apparent vulnerabilities, all of it. We call it a teaching moment, Chen confirmed. The Phantom was designed not just as a warship, but as a demonstration of humanity's core philosophy. There is always another way. In the Phantom's engineering section, Chief Patel monitored the ongoing changes in the Dominion vessels. Captain, their engineers are beginning to understand. They're not just copying our modifications, they're starting to experiment with their own variations. Good, Chen replied. That's the real victory we were aiming for. She turned back to Vexthor. Your empire has achieved incredible things by following a single path of advancement. Imagine what you could accomplish by exploring multiple paths simultaneously. The Dominion leader's scales rippled with new colors, combinations that the Phantom's cultural database couldn't quite interpret. You could have used this technology for conquest. Why choose to reveal it in this way? Because humanity learned long ago that the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or weapons, Chen answered. It's ideas. By showing you new possibilities, we've given you something far more valuable than any territory we could have taken. Lieutenant Wei's tactical display suddenly lit up with new data. Captain, detecting unusual energy signatures from the Dominion fleet. They're experimenting. Several ships are attempting to replicate our quantum field configurations. Already, Rodriguez's voice came through the comm. We barely showed them the basics. They're advancing faster than expected. Of course they are, Chen replied with a smile. They're naturally brilliant engineers. They were just constrained by their own preconceptions. Remove those limits, and you create a cascade of innovation. Vexthor finished, their translator struggling to convey their excitement. Already our scientists are proposing modifications to existing technologies that would have been considered heretical hours ago. The tactical display showed more Dominion ships attempting new configurations, their crews eagerly exploring capabilities that had always existed within their vessels. Some attempts failed spectacularly, but each failure was followed by rapid adjustments and new attempts. Your species, Vexthor observed, could have dominated this region of space. Instead, you chose to teach. Dominion through force creates enemies, Chen replied. Sharing knowledge creates allies. Humanity doesn't want subjects. We want partners who can help us explore new possibilities. The Phantom's sensors detected a sudden surge of communication between Dominion vessels as this statement was translated and distributed throughout their fleet. The rigid military channels became filled with technical discussions and theoretical debates. Your demonstration has created quite a stir in our hierarchy, Vexthor admitted. Many are calling for a complete revaluation of our approach to technological development. Some are even suggesting we've been fighting entropy itself by refusing to embrace chaos and variation. Chaos isn't the enemy of progress, Chen said. It's the source of innovation. Humanity's greatest achievements came not from following established paths, but from finding new ones. Rodriguez's voice came through again. Captain, the Dominion engineers are requesting permission to share some of their theoretical models with us. They've already found applications of our methods we hadn't considered. You see. Chen gestured to her crew's reports. Together, we can both advance further than either of us could alone. Different perspectives, different approaches, all working toward understanding the universe's possibilities. Vexthor's scales settled into a deep, steady blue. The Dominion has long sought to bring order to the galaxy. Perhaps we have been too focused on enforcing our order rather than learning from diversity. Then let this be the beginning of a new approach, Chen proposed. Not conqueror and conquered, not advanced and primitive, but different species sharing their unique perspectives and innovations. The Dominion leader's next words came without translation delay. They had switched to carefully practiced human language. Captain Chen, on behalf of the Dominion, I formally request the establishment of diplomatic and scientific relations with humanity. Chen's smile widened. Request accepted, Supreme Coordinator. I believe this marks the beginning of a most interesting partnership. Throughout both fleets, crews watched as the Phantom's seemingly primitive hull reconfigured itself one final time, revealing its true form. A sleek vessel that combined elements of both human and Dominion design philosophy. It was neither the most advanced nor the most powerful ship present, but it represented something far more important, the power of looking at old problems in new ways. Lieutenant Santos, Chen called to her communications officer, prepare a full report for Earth Command. Tell them Operation Teaching Moment was a complete success. The Dominion hasn't just learned new technology. They've learned how to innovate. As the human and Dominion ships began coordinating their return to normal space, Chen reflected that this was humanity's greatest strength, not the ability to win wars, but the wisdom to find ways to avoid them by showing others that the universe held more possibilities than they had imagined. The Phantom's mission had proved once again that the most powerful weapon in humanity's arsenal wasn't their advanced technology or clever tactics. It was their ability to think differently, and their willingness to share that gift with others.